She paid for a veteran's meal out of her own tips. Her manager fired her on the spot in front of a packed cafe. But what no one saw coming was who walked in next, and why the entire room fell silent. The lunch crowd always came in like a storm at Riverside Cafe, a modest corner joint tucked between a pharmacy and a laundromat in Eugene, Oregon. 11 a.m. was when everything changed. Coffee mugs clinked louder, receipts printed faster, and the line at the register grew longer than anyone had patience for. Tasha Melrose, 29 years old, had been working double shifts all week. Her sneakers were soaked from the morning rain, her apron still damp from that accidental iced tea spill earlier. But none of that mattered right now. She had Table 6 asking about their missing fries, a to-go order waiting to be boxed, and two toddlers screaming under Booth 3 like they were auditioning for a horror movie. Still, she moved with purpose, efficient, polite, barely flinching when a customer snapped for more ranch. Her coworker Lily Barron, a high school senior, was already 2 orders behind, and looked like she was going to cry. Tasha leaned over and whispered, "You got this, girl. Don't let them see you sweat." Behind the counter, Clayton Renshaw, the manager, stood with arms folded, eyes sharp, hair gelled back like a game show host from the 80s. He was one of those people who seemed born irritated, like life had handed him a rule book and everyone around him kept breaking it. "Melrose," he barked over the sizzle of the fryer. "Table 12 is still waiting on their check." "I sent it 10 minutes ago," she replied without turning. He scoffed. "Then walk it over yourself. Don't just send things." Tasha bit her tongue. She'd worked under Clayton long enough to know better than to respond. He never yelled, he didn't need to. The way he spoke, slow and smug, was more effective than shouting. It told you that you were replaceable, that any kindness shown to you was temporary. But at least it paid the bills. She was heading toward the kitchen when she noticed him. An old man, thin like a scarecrow, clothes damp and worn through at the elbows. Standing awkwardly near the door, his white hair was matted, his eyes cloudy, and one of his boots was untied. He looked lost. No one else noticed. Customers were too busy scrolling, sipping, or arguing over receipts. Clayton was too busy micromanaging. Tasha put the order slip in the window, then stepped toward him. "Sir," she asked gently, "are you okay?" He blinked twice, looking past her, then slowly turned his head. "Am I? I was supposed to meet someone here, I think." His voice was hoarse, barely there. Around his neck, tucked under his coat, hung a faded dog tag. She caught sight of a patch on his jacket. It was military old, maybe Korean War era, maybe Vietnam. "You hungry?" she asked. He smiled, or tried to. "I could eat something warm." Tasha knew the cafe had a rule. No handouts, no freebies. Clayton had even posted a sign in the break room. "We're a business, not a shelter." But that didn't matter now. Not when this man looked like he hadn't had a full meal in days. She guided him to an empty booth and helped him sit. She brought him a blanket. Someone had left behind in the lost and found. Then she walked straight back into the kitchen, slid a 10 from her tips into the register, and called out to the cook, "Louise, give me a plate. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, extra gravy." Louise gave her a look, but didn't say a word. He'd worked with her long enough to know, if she was doing something, it was for a reason. She brought the plate over herself, along with a glass of warm water and some cornbread. The man stared at the plate for a second, then looked up at her like she'd handed him gold. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to." Tasha smiled. "Yeah, I did." But just as she turned to check on her other tables, Clayton stepped out from behind the counter. He had seen the whole thing, and from the way his face tightened, Tasha knew exactly what was coming next. But she didn't know he'd do it in front of everyone. "You mind telling me what the hell that was?" Clayton's voice cut through the clatter of plates like a knife. Tasha turned slowly. The cafe hadn't gone quiet yet, but nearby tables were starting to listen in. A mother pushing a stroller paused. The guy at the corner booth took out one earbud. He was cold and confused. "Clayton," Tasha said, keeping her tone even. "He didn't order anything, and I didn't ask him to. I paid for the meal. From my tips." "Doesn't matter," Clayton snapped. "That's not how we run things here. You want to feed the whole damn street too? You working for charity now?" Her cheeks were burning, but not with shame. With anger. He's a veteran. He looked hungry. I did what any decent person would have done. Clayton stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound dangerous. You don't decide who gets free food. You don't run this place. I do. And when you break rules, there are consequences. Then take it out of my paycheck. Dock me. Write me up. Whatever you want. But don't make this into a scene. Clayton turned, scanned the room, and then, intentionally, loudly, called out, "Attention, folks. This employee just handed out a free meal on our dime. Just so we're clear, if anyone else needs a handout, this is the new policy. Just ask Tasha. She'll foot the bill." The cafe went quiet. Utensils paused midair. Someone at the front laughed, awkwardly. Tasha's heart sank. Her fists clenched, but she didn't say a word. The veteran, still sitting at the booth, looked up like he didn't quite understand what was happening. He tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. Clayton wasn't finished. "You're done, Melrose. Turn in your apron and get out." That was it. Tasha stared at him, stunned. No warning. No discussion. Just humiliation, served up in front of strangers. Louise poked his head from the kitchen. Lily stood frozen by the drink station. No one said a word. The old man stood up slowly. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking, "she didn't do anything wrong. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Clayton waved him off like a nuisance. "Sir, please, eat your food and stay out of staff business." But the man didn't sit back down. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something that shimmered faintly. An old silver badge, worn but recognizable. A Purple Heart pin, bent at the edges but unmistakable. "I served in Key San," he said quietly. "Most of my unit didn't make it. My boys, they'd never let this stand." Clayton raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "She showed me more respect than half this country has in decades. You fired her for doing what's right." Tasha stepped forward, her voice firm. "Now please, sir, you don't owe me anything. Just finish your meal." "Okay." The veteran looked at her, then back at Clayton. He placed the pen on the edge of the table and whispered, almost to himself, "They'll know I'm not alone." It sounded odd, like he was talking to ghosts. Tasha figured maybe he was just confused, lost in memory. She untied her apron and folded it carefully. She didn't cry. Not here, not for him. Louise stepped out from the kitchen. "This isn't right," he muttered. Clayton shot him a look. "You want to go too?" Louise looked at Tasha and shrugged. "Just saying." She walked past the veteran on her way out and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "It's okay," she whispered. "It's really okay." But his eyes, misty and unfocused, locked onto hers. "They'll come," he said again softly. "They always come." She didn't know what that meant. Outside, the rain had picked up again. Her hoodie barely kept her dry as she stood near the bus stop, staring at nothing, still holding her apron in both hands. Back inside, Clayton strutted around like he'd won something, but not everyone shared that view. Customers whispered. One couple stood up and left. Lily wiped her eyes behind the counter, and in the booth by the window, the veteran sat quietly, chewing slowly, like every bite held back a memory he wasn't sure he could handle. But what came next, none of them could have predicted. Inside the cafe, Clayton tried to return things to normal. He hated losing control. Nothing got under his skin more than people questioning his authority. So when Tasha walked out without crying or begging, without even a proper argument, it rattled him more than he'd admit. He paced behind the counter, checking the receipt printer, rearranging napkins, snapping at Lily when she dropped a fork. The usual arrogance in his voice had shifted into something tighter. Customers weren't laughing anymore. A few looked uncomfortable. One woman at the bar was filming quietly with her phone propped up against her coffee cup. "Louise," Clayton barked, "need another plate of scrambled and hash for table 5. We've got orders to push out." Louise didn't respond right away. Clayton snapped his fingers toward the kitchen window. "Louise, you hear me?" "I heard you," came the reply, calm but distant. "Then act like it." The old veteran still sat quietly, eating what he could. His hand shook when he lifted the fork. Sometimes he'd stop chewing and just stare at his plate like he wasn't sure where he was. His coat had fallen open a bit more, revealing a set of medals sewn inside, barely holding together. Some customers whispered, now recognizing that this wasn't just some old man looking for warmth. He was someone who had done something. Clayton noticed the attention, but doubled down. When not a soup kitchen, he muttered under his breath. The bell above the door jingled, then again and again. For sharp, heavy steps, for silhouettes. Broad shoulders, boots, uniforms. One of them had a sleeve with stripes, high enough to catch the attention of anyone who'd served. They weren't carrying weapons. They didn't need to. They walked with the kind of authority no manager in a cafe could match. The cafe went dead silent. Even the sizzling from the kitchen faded under the weight of their presence. One of them scanned the room, eyes stopping on the veteran by the window. "Sir," the first Marine said, "we got your message." The veteran turned slowly, his lips parted, eyes clearer than they'd been all day. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said, "but she got fired for feeding me." The Marine nodded. "Yes, sir, we heard. We came to make sure that kind of thing doesn't go unanswered." Clayton stepped forward, fake smile loaded. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The second Marine, taller, eyes like stone, looked him over. "You're the one in charge here?" "I am, and I'd appreciate if you didn't interfere with my staff or my policies." "Your staff," the third Marine cut in. "From what we saw, your staff included a woman who gave up her own money to help a veteran. That's not interference. That's character." Clayton's voice lost a bit of steam. "This is a business. We have rules. She broke them." The first Marine, a captain judging by the pins, took one step forward. "You fired a woman for showing compassion to a man who put his life on the line for this country, a man we all know and respect. You humiliated her, not just in front of your staff, but in front of strangers. And now you want to hide behind policy." "It's not personal," Clayton insisted. "Sure looked personal," the Marine replied. A customer cleared his throat near the front. "She's been working here for years. She's always kind. She remembers people's names. She remembers how I take my coffee. More than I can say for anyone else." Then a young guy in a hoodie added, "She's the reason I come here. Not for the food." Lily, standing by the drink station, stepped forward slowly. "She helps me close, even when it's not her shift. She walks me to my car when it's dark. She's the only reason I didn't quit after my first week." Clayton looked around. His grip on control was slipping fast. "I'm not going to stand here and get ganged up on." "In my own cafe," he snapped. "We're not here to gang up," the captain said evenly. "We're here to speak up. Big difference." Luis leaned out from the kitchen again, this time with his apron off. "I'm going to take my break. Maybe a long one." The veteran sat quietly, watching. His eyes welled up. "I didn't mean to make this happen," he murmured again. "You didn't," the captain replied. "You just reminded us what matters." But the cafe wasn't done reacting. The next voices weren't in uniform, and that changed everything. Outside, the sidewalk glistened with leftover rain. Tasha sat at the edge of the bus bench, her apron still folded neatly in her lap like it meant something. Her hand shook, but not from cold. She wasn't mad that she got fired. What stung was the way it happened, like her kindness was a problem that needed to be stamped out in public. She stared at the puddle in front of her, watching cars roll by without looking up. She didn't know what hurt more, the embarrassment or the silence from her co-workers as she walked out. She expected at least one person to speak up. Louise, maybe Lily, but nothing. Then her phone buzzed, a message from her older sister. "Still good for dinner Sunday?" She didn't answer. Back inside, things were unraveling quickly. Clayton tried to hold the room together. "Okay, everybody," he said with an artificial grin. "Let's get back to your meals. Show's over. We're not turning this place into a circus." But it was already too late. People had seen what they saw, and they weren't about to forget it. A woman sitting by the window stood up slowly. Her name was Jean Harlow, a retired nurse who came to Riverside every Thursday after her physical therapy. She walked with a cane and a purpose. "I was in nursing school during the Gulf War," she said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My brother came home in a flag-covered box. That old man in the booth, he could have been him. And that waitress? She acted better than you ever will, son." Clayton looked like someone had slapped him. Another customer, an Uber driver named Reggie Mathers, who came in every weekday morning and usually kept to himself, spoke next. "I've been coming here since it opened. Never had a problem with anyone, except you. You don't lead people by belittling them. You lead by example." Tasha was the example. Someone clapped, then someone else. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was quiet, awkward, but real. Clayton was losing grip fast. This is my place. I decide what goes and what doesn't. One of the Marines stepped toward him, this time softer in tone. Sir, no one's questioning your right to run your business. We're questioning the way you did it. You could have pulled her aside. You could have asked a question. Instead, you humiliated her. Clayton threw up his hands. She gave away product. That costs money. How much did the plate cost you? Jean asked. $10? 12. No answer. How much do you think this will cost you when that video hits Facebook? She pointed to the customer who had her phone out the entire time. The one pretending to sip her latte while clearly recording everything from the moment the Marines walked in. Clayton glanced at her. His jaw moved like he wanted to speak, but didn't. Louise came back out from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel. You've been riding us for years like we're lucky to be here. Tasha never treated any of us that way. She stayed late, showed up early, never complained. She bought Lily lunch her first week here and didn't say a word about it. Lily's voice cracked when she spoke. She helped me get my brakes fixed. Paid half. I didn't even ask. There it was. The weight of the room had shifted completely. Clayton stood in a space that used to be his, but no longer belonged to him. He scanned the room, eyes narrowed. All of you think you're heroes now, huh? You think she's some kind of saint? No one answered. That was louder than any response. In the booth, the veteran gently folded his napkin and placed it on the plate. He reached for the Purple Heart pin, but one of the Marines stopped him. Leave it, he said softly. It belongs here now. The old man nodded once. Tell her thank you, he whispered. Tell her my boys never forget. Then he stood, slower than most, but still with dignity, and followed the Marines out. As the door closed behind them, the entire cafe felt different, heavier somehow. Clayton stared at the napkin on the plate, then the pin. He said nothing. But outside, someone else was already waiting. Someone who didn't come to eat. It wasn't flashy. No sirens, no flag stickers or bumper slogans. Just a black Chevy, Suburban, rolling to a quiet stop outside the cafe. The rain had faded to a mist by now, barely clinging to the windshield. It idled for a moment before the driver's door clicked open. Tasha, still sitting on the bench, looked up out of reflex. She didn't recognize the vehicle, but there was something different about how it moved. Smooth, deliberate, like it belonged to someone who didn't waste time. The doors opened, one after another. 4 men stepped out. Not young, not fresh-faced. These weren't recruits. These were Marines who'd been through things and come out the other side with a calm most people didn't understand. 2 were black, 1 Latino, 1 white. Their uniforms were clean, but lived in. Their boots were regulation, but broken in. The one who stepped forward first had sergeant stripes and the kind of expression that made people straighten up without being told to. Tasha noticed how passers-by slowed down a look, but didn't stop. You could tell these men weren't here for coffee. They scanned the cafe windows without saying a word. The sergeant, Reuben Cole, according to the nameplate stitched into his chest, opened the door and walked in. The others followed. The bell rang just the same, but the moment they stepped inside, the energy shifted, like someone had unplugged the room. Reggie, still sitting at the corner table, whispered, "Those ain't tourists." Behind the counter, Clayton froze mid-step. The paper in his hand hung limp. His eyes bounced from one uniform to the next. Sergeant Cole looked around, then spotted the empty booth, the one where the veteran had just been sitting. The half-eaten meal, the Purple Heart still resting gently on a napkin. He walked over to the booth, stood there in silence for 3, maybe 4 seconds, then turned to the room. Who fired the woman who gave him this plate? No one answered. Cole didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He turned again, this time toward the counter. You? He asked, locking eyes with Clayton. Clayton swallowed. Look, I don't know what this is about. But yes, you do, Cole interrupted. You know exactly what this is about. The tallest of the Marines, a man with sharp eyes and a scar that curved under his chin, stepped closer. His name is Walter Haggerty. He served with our unit's grandfather in Vietnam. The man who taught us what it meant to be brothers, Cole added. Walter doesn't say much, but when he does, we listen. So when he called one of our guys, said he'd been helped by someone who showed more loyalty than he'd seen in years, and then got fired for it. Yeah, we made time. Clayton laughed nervously. This is getting blown way out of proportion. She broke policy. She gave away food without permission. The Marine with the scar folded his arms. You know how many policies get broken when someone's life is on the line? When a decision has to be made in real time. We were taught to lead by example. Sounds like she was too. Another Marine, stockier, softer spoken, pointed to the Purple Heart. You see that pin? That doesn't belong on your table. It belongs to people who understand sacrifice. Clearly, that ain't you. Customers remained silent. Some pulled out phones. Some just watched. Tasha, from the bench outside, couldn't see exactly what was going on. But when she noticed the veterans inside, she stood up instinctively. She didn't recognize any of them, but something told her she was involved in this, whether she liked it or not. She stepped closer to the window and saw the booth empty, except for the plate and the pin. Her breath caught in her throat. Back inside, Clayton tried one last time to wrest control. Look, I'm not here to be lectured. This is my business. You don't like it, don't eat here. Cole nodded once. Fair. But just know, we don't forget either. And we don't stay quiet when someone disrespects one of our own, or someone who protects them. The Marine with the scar leaned in just enough for Clayton to hear him clearly. You fired the wrong one. But they weren't the only ones who showed up that day. Word was already spreading, and the next voices were even closer to home. Tasha didn't want to go back in. She stood at the window like a ghost outside her own story, watching a scene she couldn't believe was happening. For Marines in full uniform, standing in her old workplace, holding the room in a kind of stillness even Clayton couldn't control. She stepped back, unsure what to do. Then the cafe door swung open. It wasn't a customer or a Marine. It was Lily, clutching her apron, cheeks red from crying. Tasha, she said, rushing up. You need to come back inside. Please. I'm not trying to make it worse, Tasha replied. You didn't make it worse, Lily said. You did the only thing that made any of this make sense. She grabbed Tasha's wrist gently. Please. Inside, things weren't cooling down. Clayton stood behind the register, arms crossed, face hard, but his eyes darted like someone who knew he was losing ground. The Marines hadn't moved. They didn't have to. When Tasha walked in, a few people actually clapped. Not the loud, over-the-top kind, just soft, quiet, respectful. Like people who knew what she had done was simple and rare. Clayton's voice cracked slightly. I thought I made it clear. You no longer work here. I'm not here for the job, Tasha replied. I'm here because a man who served this country deserved a warm meal. And because I'm tired of acting like kindness needs permission. Sergeant Cole turned to her, respectful. Miss Melrose, we're sorry you were treated this way. It shouldn't have gone down like that. Tasha gave a small nod. Thank you. One of the Marines, the tall one with the scar, looked around the room. You all watched this happen. Some of you filmed it. Some just stared. But someone needs to say this out loud. You don't punish people for being decent. Clayton barked a bitter laugh. Oh, come on. She didn't cure cancer. She handed out a plate of meatloaf. She handed out dignity, Cole replied calmly. That count for something in our book. A woman near the front counter, Cheryl Miles, who ran a hair salon 2 doors down, stood up and crossed her arms. I've seen how you treat your staff, Clayton. The passive-aggressive notes. The way you threatened to cut hours. You didn't fire her because she gave away a plate. You fired her because she reminded people that you don't care. That's not true, Clayton muttered. Reggie, still sipping his now cold coffee, spoke up again. Man, I've been sitting in that corner every morning for 2 years. You've never once said good morning. You walk around like everyone owes you something. Well, guess what? You're the one who lost something today. Clayton stepped out from behind the counter, hands on his hips. You all want to make me the villain here? Go ahead. But none of you pay the bills around here. Louise, standing by the kitchen window, finally said, we keep the lights on. We clean up. We take your crap and smile through it. And the one person who actually made this place feel human, you fired her. Clayton raised his voice. This is mutiny. No, Cole said. This is accountability. Just then, the bell over the door rang again. A man in his early 50s walked in. Military haircut, navy jacket, a local contractor who often worked with veterans. Charles Fenner. I heard what happened, he said. Didn't take long for the story to hit the group chat. Tasha, if you're not already hired somewhere else, I'd be proud to offer you a job at our center. Better pay, better hours, and a place where people actually respect the ones who make it all work. Tasha blinked. She hadn't expected that. Not here, not this fast. Why would you do that? She asked. Charles smiled. Because Walter Haggerty isn't just a veteran, he's my uncle, and I trust him more than I trust most people walking this earth. Clayton looked stunned. Cheryl looked around. Well, looks like you just lost your best employee and half your regulars. Hope the math works out, Clayton. The Purple Heart still sat on the table, a quiet, shining reminder of what had started all this. But it wasn't the only thing that would leave a mark, because the rest of the town was already talking. And some things can't be swept under a rug. By the time Charles Fenner finished speaking, the cafe wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It had become a kind of courtroom. Every word carried weight. Every silence said something. Clayton's face had gone from smug to stiff, and now to something closer to pale. He glanced around for support, but even the dishwasher, barely old enough to drive, had come out from the back and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. His name was Omar Benford. 17, quiet, usually kept his earbuds in and his head down. But not today. He cleared his throat. Can I say something? Clayton raised an eyebrow. Unless it's to go wash dishes. But Omar didn't flinch. I was in the back when she gave him that meal. I heard the whole thing. She pulled $10 from her own tips. She told Louise to ring it in. She didn't sneak anything. Clayton opened his mouth, but Omar didn't stop. And you know what else? She's the only one who ever asks if I need a ride home. I live 2 buses and a long walk away. No one else here even knows that. The room was dead still. She got fired for doing something my mom would have done, Omar said, looking down for a second. And if she's not good enough to work here, then I'm probably not either. You quitting? Clayton snapped. Omar gave a one-shoulder shrug. I don't know yet, but I know I'm not scared of you. From the booth near the front, a man who hadn't said much all day finally stood. He was a trucker, Lenny Duval, salt and pepper beard, weathered hands. He pulled out his wallet and dropped a 20 on the counter. For the veterans' lunch, he said, and for the waitress who should still be here. Then he walked out. That started something. One by one, customers began doing the same, standing, grabbing their jackets, leaving bills on tables, nodding to Tasha as they passed her. Like she was someone they knew, even if they didn't. By the time the 6th person left, Clayton's voice had turned gravelly. This is ridiculous. No, Lily said softly. This is what happens when people stop being afraid of you. Louise finally walked all the way out from behind the kitchen window, wiped his hands on a rag, and placed his chef's knife down on the counter with quiet finality. I'm out, he said. I've worked in 6 kitchens. Never had to look a good person in the eye while they got tossed for being human. Clayton tried one more time to speak like he had authority. You people think I'm the enemy? I built this place. I put in the hours. Then it's too bad you forgot who helped you keep it running, said Cheryl from the doorway. She hadn't left yet. Tasha hadn't moved much through all of it. She just stood there, watching. Her hands gripped her apron like it still meant something, even though it didn't belong to her anymore. Sergeant Cole turned to her. We don't speak up for just anyone. But today wasn't about charity. It was about respect. What you did wasn't small. I didn't do it for a reaction, she said quietly. He just looked hungry. Exactly, the Marine with the scar said. And you gave him more than food. Omar walked up to her, a little awkward. I don't really say this stuff. But thanks. I was having a bad day, and then you reminded me people still care. Tasha managed a small smile. Thanks, Omar. Then Lily approached, biting her lip. I'm sorry I didn't say anything when he fired you. I should have. You didn't owe me that, Tasha replied, but thank you for saying it now. Outside, more people had gathered, some curious, some concerned. A few already had their phones out. Whatever had happened inside wasn't going to stay inside. A local reporter from Eugene Ledger walked in and asked softly, Do you mind if I ask what happened here? Clayton groaned audibly. Are you serious? Reggie leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Oh, it's serious now. But the real shift didn't happen inside the cafe. It happened hours later, when the story hit the internet and strangers started weighing in from thousands of miles away. By late afternoon, the phones at Riverside Café wouldn't stop ringing. But they weren't reservation calls. They weren't takeout orders. They were strangers from out of town, some angry, some disgusted, some just curious. The video Cheryl had taken of the Marines confronting Clayton, of Tasha walking back in with her dignity intact, had already made it to local Facebook groups, then Twitter, then a few veteran forums. Within 5 hours, it was viral. The comments came in waves. That manager should be ashamed. She did more in one moment than most people do in a lifetime. Someone please give this woman a better job. She deserves more than that dump. My grandfather was a Marine. I'd eat anywhere that lady worked. Tasha didn't even know the video existed until Lily texted her a link that evening. She watched it in silence from her small apartment off West 7th. Her living room barely fit the couch, but she sat on the edge of it, phone in hand, mouth pressed shut. She watched herself walk out of that cafe, then walk back in, then speak up. I'm here because I'm tired of acting like kindness needs permission. She heard her own voice playback and didn't recognize it. Not in a bad way, just different, stronger than she thought she'd sounded in the moment. She set the phone down. Not long after, her inbox started filling up. A handful of reporters wanted to talk. Some guy from a local podcast. Someone from a veterans nonprofit in Salem. But it was one email that really stood out. Subject, job opportunity, stand with us. From Jordan Malik, Operations Director, Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center. Tasha hesitated before clicking the name. Haggerty gave her pause. It had to be connected to Walter, the veteran she'd served. And it was. Miss Melrose, my name is Jordan Malik. I oversee the day-to-day operations at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center here in Eugene. Walter is a dear friend of our founder and one of the reasons this center exists. He told us about what you did, then we saw it for ourselves. We are currently expanding our front-end staff and looking for someone with warmth, grace, and good judgment. We'd be honored to have you join us full-time, benefits, better hours. You've already shown us who you are. Let us show you the kind of place that values that. Tasha read it 3 times. She didn't know if she wanted to cry or laugh. She couldn't remember the last time someone had called her graceful. She called the number listed at the bottom. Jordan picked up right away. Miss Melrose. Yes, this is Tasha. I hope the offer didn't catch you off guard. It did, honestly, in a good way. Well, we've had your name floating around here all day. Walter hasn't stopped talking about you. I didn't even know his name until now, she said quietly. He remembers everything, just not always in the right order. But he said one thing clearly. She saw me. That's more than most do. They talked for 20 minutes. Jordan didn't push. He explained the job duties, some front desk work, helping clients find services, organizing meal drop-offs, and listening. Just being there, showing up, that he said, is what we call service. She said yes. Before the call ended the next morning, she got dressed like it was her first day of school. She took the bus again, same stop, same weather, but it felt like a different life. The Haggerty Center wasn't fancy, but it was warm. Real people, real purpose. On the wall near the entrance, someone had already printed out a still frame from the video of her standing in Riverside Café, Marines behind her. Below it, a quote in black marker. You don't punish people for being decent. Walter was there that day too, sitting in the lobby with a paper cup of coffee and a crossword he wasn't really solving. You made it, he said with a small smile. She sat next to him. Yeah, she whispered. I made it. But while she moved forward, the cafe she left behind was heading for a reckoning of its own. Because once the internet picks up a story like this, the consequences don't stop at the door. By the time Monday rolled around, Riverside Cafe wasn't the same place. The morning crowd was light, unusually light. Only 2 tables were occupied, both by out-of-towners who didn't know what had happened. The regulars? They were gone, vanished. Even the ones who always sat at the counter with the crossword puzzle and the black coffee gone. Clayton stood behind the register, pretending to rearrange receipts, but mostly just trying to ignore the fact that the place felt hollow. Empty chairs echoed more than footsteps. There was no line, no laughter, no music. Even Louise's old spot in the kitchen had been filled by a temp who didn't talk much. Clayton had always walked around, like he owned the block. Now his gait was slower, his voice lower. The pride he wore like a badge of honor had faded. Because the video didn't just go viral. It got picked up by Oregon Today, then reshared by a Marine Corps Instagram page with 2.4 million followers. A local news outlet ran a story titled "Waitress Fired for Feeding Veteran Finds New Purpose at Haggerty Center." The comments under that headline were brutal. "Shame on the cafe. That manager needs to step down. Tasha Melrose is a local hero." The real disgrace here isn't the firing. It's how long it took people to say something. Even worse for Clayton, a petition was circulating, over 15,000 signatures and counting, demanding new ownership or a public apology from Clayton himself. Neither seemed likely to happen. He tried to do damage control. He posted a weak statement on the Café's Facebook page. "We regret any misunderstandings and are committed to ensuring all customers and employees are treated with respect in the future." People weren't buying it. One comment read, "You didn't regret anything until your table's emptied." Another simply said, "You lost the heart of your cafe the second you fired her." Meanwhile, over at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center, things couldn't have looked more different. Tasha had just finished helping a woman fill out paperwork to access housing support. It wasn't glamorous work. There were no lights, no cameras, but it felt important, solid, real. The break room smelled like coffee and fresh cinnamon rolls donated by a local bakery. After they saw the video, staff passed around small jokes and kind words. Every now and then, someone would gently tap Tasha's shoulder and say, "Saw you on the news," like it was some kind of secret handshake. But Tasha didn't let the attention get to her. She knew this wasn't about fame. It was about the fact that she could finally breathe. That same afternoon, a woman walked into the outreach center with hesitation in her step. She looked out of place, business casual clothes, clutching a handbag like a shield. "I'm looking for Tasha," she said at the front desk. Tasha came out, wiping her hands on a paper towel. "That's me." The woman introduced herself as Eileen March, Clayton's silent business partner. She'd put up the initial capital for Riverside Café, but rarely got involved in day-to-day operations. "I just wanted to say I didn't know what happened until last night. I saw the video. I was horrified." Tasha nodded politely. "That's kind of you to say." Eileen looked like she wanted to crawl into her own purse. "I should have stepped in sooner, but I wasn't paying attention. That's on me. I've started the process of separating myself from Clayton. The cafe's being appraised now. We're putting it up for sale." Tasha's eyebrows lifted. "Wow, that's big. Yeah, I think it's time for new leadership. The town deserves better. You deserve better." Before leaving, Eileen pulled something from her bag, a small envelope. "I know this doesn't make up for anything, but it's from my own account. No strings attached." Tasha looked at the envelope, then at Eileen. "I appreciate that. Truly. But I didn't do what I did expecting anything back." "I know," Eileen said. "That's exactly why you deserve it." When she left, Tasha didn't even open the envelope right away. She tucked it into her bag and went back to work. There were people who needed her. But as the day wound down and the lights dimmed at the outreach center, only one thing remained unsaid. The truth she'd been carrying quietly all along. It was near closing time at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center. The front lobby had emptied, and the hum of voices and footsteps had softened into quiet paperwork and the gentle tap of a printer. Tasha sat at her desk, flipping through intake forms. Outside the window, the sun dipped behind the trees lining the edge of the parking lot, painting the sky in shades of orange. Walter Haggerty still sat in his favorite chair by the front, a blanket over his knees, staring out like he was waiting for something. "You need anything before I lock up?" she asked, walking over to him. He shook his head. "Just thinking about what back then, when I was in country, you didn't get far if you didn't trust the people around you. Didn't matter what color they were. What they believed just mattered if they had your back." Tasha leaned against the wall beside him. "I don't know if I did anything special," she said. "It was just a meal." He turned to her. "That's what makes it special." She didn't respond right away. "I used to wonder if I'd ever matter," she said. "I worked hard, tried to be decent, but it always felt like I was one small step away from being disposable." Walter looked her dead in the eye. "People like you, they keep things standing quietly, without noise, without applause." "That manager?" He thought power meant being in charge. But real power, real respect comes from what people say about you when you're not in the room. Tasha smiled. You sure you're not supposed to be writing books or something? He laughed. Nah, I just live long enough to recognize decency when I see it. There was a quiet moment, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. Then she asked, Did you really call those Marines after I left? Walter shook his head slowly. I didn't have to. One of them checks in on me every Sunday. I just told them what happened. Told them a good woman lost her job for being kind. Tasha blinked. That was enough to bring all four of them down there. He gave a dry chuckle. You don't know what you stirred up, girl. When you're good to one of us, you're good to all of us. She didn't know what to say to that. Later, as she walked to the bus stop, the envelope from Eileen March still sat untouched in her bag. She thought about the past few days, the cold rain, the moment she stood over Walter's booth and decided she wasn't going to wait for permission to be kind. And then the fallout. The Marine boots on tile floors, the crowd turning quiet, her own voice rising to say something that wasn't rehearsed, just real. She remembered how it felt to be seen. Not praised, not pitted, just seen. That's what stuck. At home, she finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and a cashier's check for $5,000. Thank you for showing the rest of us what integrity looks like. I hope this helps you build something better. Eileen. She set it down carefully, unsure whether to cry or not. Not because of the money, but because for once, doing the right thing didn't end in silence. She picked up her phone and opened the video again, not to watch herself, but to read the comments beneath. She's the reason I believe in people again. There's hope, and her name is Tasha Melrose. What if we were all just a little more like her? That one got to her because it wasn't about heroism. It wasn't about standing on a table and shouting. It was just about not turning away when someone needed something. That was all, and it was enough. Life isn't made of grand gestures. It's made of small choices stacked like bricks, the choice to listen, to speak up, to help, to give, even when no one's watching. And sometimes those choices change more than just the moment. They change the people watching, the ones too tired, too afraid, or too used to looking the other way. Tasha never asked for recognition. She asked for humanity. And in the end, that's what she got. If this story moved you, share it. Remind someone that kindness still matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more stories that shine a light on everyday courage. Because sometimes it only takes one person to remind us who we're supposed to be.